indescribable how she carried herself, her energy, everything about it. Funny enough, she passed away and all these stories emerged. I mean, she was not an angel growing up, clearly, being the oldest in her family of nine. So she was the leader in the house, and she obviously had to crack the whip on the siblings, being traditional Vietnamese. But somewhere down the line, after losing her husband, my grandfather, she changed and was a very devoted, dedicated, and committed Buddhist. As a result of that, she emanated this peace. It's no different than us, meeting certain people in our lives where we feel this peace when they walk in. And they walk in, it's like Christmas morning. Likewise, some people walk in the room and it feels like a funeral home. And so I was quite inspired by that. Born and raised Catholic in a Catholic family household. So my dad's side is Catholic, my mom's side is Buddhist. We got along just fine. She was so chill, and that's all I really wanted in my life was things to just be chill. I grew up in a home that was filled with domestic violence, a lot of anger, a lot of trauma. So when she passed away, I had all these unfulfilled hopes and dreams that I thought was going to come to fruition. Then she passed away, so of course that took a humongous toll in my life, a pivotal point in my life where I needed her the most. It just was the way that it was. It couldn't be any other. So then I'm dealing with that, and followed by my best friend Jacob Hall, who passed away in a accidental death. And out of all the friends that I got, I would describe Jacob Hall as a brother that I never had. Again, only child in the family, lonely only. That would be me. And out of all friends, the dozens and dozens and dozens of friends that I had dinner with Jacob and his girlfriend the night before, and then the following morning he passed away. I remember working that Saturday, and my heart stopped. I had to go over the house to verify because I didn't believe it. And that's when I really hit rock bottom. I was already spiraling down, trying to make sense of my grandmother's death. My mom was depressed. I said, go to therapy. She said no. Um, and then Jacob's death was such a punch in my heart. It described as ripping someone's heart at age 20. I don't remember in 2015 how old I was, but mid 20s. Um, and I was on a very suicidal path. I was either going to be in prison or deader than a doorknob with the path that I was going. Every day I woke up, I was determined that every step, everything that I did, every step that I took was designed for self extinguishment. And somewhere down the line during this rock bottom thing, I reflected on Buddhism, its teachings, the meaning behind it, renunciation, the threefold training. And I said, well, you better change, or else you're really going to be dead. And what kind of legacy would you leave behind? And how would your grandmother want? How's all this going to unfold? And if you were to see her in heaven or hell, how are you going to justify this to her? And if you saw Jacob in heaven, how would Jacob feel? Would want you to, what kind of conversation is that, right? Hey Jacob, how are you? Well, how'd you get here? I don't know. I mean, I got shot by cops, or I took drugs, I overdosed, or I don't know, I got hit by a car. I mean, a million ways to die, right? And I just couldn't live with that. A wise fear instilled in me. um so I figured, well, let's slow down a little bit and let's trace my steps. Like, how did I get here? Like, what happened? Life moves quick, and I started to trace every step of the way. We call that the practice of dependent origination, paticca samuppada. So I traced back as young as I could remember, being I don't know, I think like 6 years old. And I wanted to trace my anger. I wanted to trace my ignorance. I wanted to trace everything. What led to today? It's a hard thing. It's a very hard thing to do, to just look at oneself, one's flaw, one's own making in a family full of flaws. I mean, we all want to run away from the truth. We all want to run away from what actually happened and not facing the pain head on. And that's what I did. Part of my training back then, becoming a monk, was to take a 1 year silent retreat. And in that year, part of that year was to fulfill the practice of dependent origination in my own history. And then after I concluded that, I was secure in the knowledge. I got it. I got all the insights as to why I am here and what I need to do moving on forward. That practice could take a lot of years, and I was just surprised that I got past it. And I think in the whole year I spoke about 3 paragraphs to a few humans that were around. Um, but that was where the start of the path to peace.
Wow, that is quite a story. So, on the road of self-destruction, I think you come to a point where you realize that if I continue this path at the inevitable end, the people that have passed away that I may see, they wouldn't be happy with the life that I've lived to get here to this point. So, but prior, you say you grew up Catholic. So, is that because your grandmother was Buddhist that you decided to give Buddhism a try, or were you just not satisfied with Catholicism?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think in my past life I must have been a monk. Must have, because every time when I go to Vietnam, I've been to Vietnam 13 times in the totality of my lifetime, and every time I always veer towards the monasteries, the temples. So peaceful. I didn't understand a word they were saying. All the monks running around. Well, they don't. I mean, they don't run, but they're doing walking meditation, and there's so many of them at the White Buddha monastery in Nha Trang City, Vietnam. I was always drawn to the peace and the energy you feel in a monastery. When I go to church, it's a little cold. I mean, Jesus Christ is on the cross, and it's cold. It doesn't feel so warming to me. It may work for other people, but to me, and then a lot of the teachings had a lot to do with guilt, and I felt like everything I was doing had instilled a lot of guilt in my heart. That's really intense for someone who's young. So I reverted back to how I felt when visiting these monasteries, prostrating in front of the Buddha, and the teachings that my grandmother and her siblings repeat over and over again: give more, take less, give more, take less, karma, karma, karma. Everything has consequences. Think about your action. Mindful, mindful, mindful. They say enough of it, and it just sticks in my mind. And it makes sense. You connect the dots. Young kids, what do we know, right? They just throw a bunch of words out, and it's up in our head, and somewhere down the line you start connecting the dots, and it just wakes you up one morning.
Yeah, that's similar to the experience I had when I began to discover Buddhism for myself. So, I'm half Lao, half white. My mom's American white, my dad's Lao. So I grew up going to Christian churches, Pentecostal, to me, that um, very, I don't know if familiar with them, they're very exuberant, very loud, speak in tongues, shout, holler, expressive worship. And that was my raising. And all the preaching and hellfire and brimstone, you're a sinner, 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 you're going to hell. And so once I became an adult, um, or after high school, I went to trade school in Memphis, Tennessee, and I wanted to learn how to read and write Laos and Thai. I could speak, but I didn't know how to read and write. So I went to a Thai restaurant one day to eat, and I asked the owner, "Do you know that they can teach me? I'm willing to pay." He said, "Oh, if you go to the temple, they'll teach you for free." And I said, "Oh, I can't go to the temple because I'll go to hell if, you know, they're Buddhists, they're not Christians, so I'll go to hell." And he said, "Oh, I don't think like that." He said, "Just go, they're very nice, they'll help you." So I went one day, and I'm sitting outside, and the monks weren't there. And so I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm actually here. And that same peacefulness, tranquilness, and energy, I felt it. I felt it. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm just sitting here all alone. So I left, and I went back a couple of days later, and then I met the monks. There was two. And the first thing I wanted to do, it's going to sound crazy, but the first thing I wanted to do was feel the rose. Can I touch your rose? Because I never, you know, I said, sure, and they let me touch it. So I went inside, and um, they were very kind. They began to talk to me about who I was, you know. And then so I got to the point I was going every day to the temple, every single day. And some days not to learn, some days just to be in that atmosphere.
Mm.
And so one of the guys at the school I was going to was a minister, and he knew I was going to the temple every day. And when he see me, he actually drive me. When he see me come out, get back in the car, I was so happy, whatever. He said, I think you're going to end up becoming a Buddhist. He said, you would just so happy. And there's different once you go in and you come back out, you're a different person. And I said, really? You think so? I said, oh, yes. And so, fast forward a year, I graduate, and I moved back to Nashville to live with my Laos grandparents. Now, my Laos grandparents had converted to Christianity, go to a Baptist church. So one day, my grandfather and I are going down the road, and I said, Uncle Powell, Grandpa, I said, I'm going to the temple. I need to go see the temple. He said, why? He said, we're Christians. I said, I just want to go. I got to know where it's at. He said, okay, I'll take you. So he drives me there, and it incidentally wasn't far from where we lived. It was like maybe 10 miles.
Mm.
And he takes me, and I said, okay, I have to go in now. And he said, okay, go. And I went inside. It was different from the Thai temple, not so much as, um, this was more of an elaborate temple, and they had people actually there meditating. The Thai temple did. It was just a monk. And as I go in, I see people sitting on the floor meditating. I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. Never seen anybody do that. And so the one of the monks said, "What can we do for you?" And I said, "I don't know. I just felt the need to come." And he said, "Okay." So I went and I sat down. I just sat there in front of this huge altar, this big, like 10-foot Buddha, and I just sitting there just gazing up into his eyes. And I know it's a statue. I understand that, right? But I was sitting there. I sat for probably 45 minutes in complete silence and awe at just this whole situation going on. So then I just get up. I didn't know how to chant. I didn't know any chanting. I didn't know anything. I just sit there and I get up. And I go and I tell the monks thank you and I leave. My grandfather side, okay, what did you do? And I said, well, I went in, I talked to the monks for a minute, and I sat down for a while. I'm going now. Sorry, he said, okay. He said, but don't tell your grandma I brought you here. She'll yell at me. So, okay. So, he takes me home. He takes me home, but see, I'm going to college at the time, and I have to use a car. So, every single day after class, I went to the temple every day. And it gets to the point that I'm just sitting there, and they're like, okay, well, if you want to, say something, start saying, flip toe, and then you tell me how to meditate. You tell me the whole 9 yards. And I'm thinking, okay, everything I've learned in Christianity is going, slipping away. This, everything I'm learning about Buddha, Anita, Napa, it's all making sense. Uh, it's permanent, the whole thing, suffering, the Four Noble Truths. I'm like, I think I may become a Buddhist. And then I remember the minister at Memphis telling me I think I'll become a Buddhist. I said, I don't think I am. But I'm like, well, I think I'm going to become a Buddhist. And so I went through this whole ordeal, getting to really understand uh, the people there and what was going on, and understanding the culture of Buddhism. And shortly after that, a few years later, in became a novice for the first time. Then a couple of years after that, second. So my story is similar to yours in that I didn't experience great tragedy. I guess the one tragedy I experienced before becoming a novice is my stepdad passed away, and he had raised me like that was his own son. And we had this falling out the last year of his life. I had a fiance, and she drove a wedge between my family and I at the time. And he and I didn't speak for the whole last year of his life until he was on his deathbed. And then 2 hours before he passed away, I told him, I'm so sorry for everything. And I forgave you a long time ago, and I love you. And right after he closed his eyes and went to unconsciousness. And I felt like, it was something I needed to hear for my sanity. So, interestingly, though, so there's different traditions in Buddhism. Obviously, Southeast Asians, most of them are Theravada. Vietnamese are usually Mahayana. You're from Vietnam, but you're a Theravada monk. So how did this happen? How did you go from being Mahayana, or did you did you go straight to Theravada when you should embrace Buddhism?
My first
What was
train,
that process for you?
I veered towards a teacher, Venerable Tong, in my city. He was Mahayanan, and it's actually I'm starting to see a commonality. Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, everyone knows Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, American scholar, who was also taken in by a Mahayanan monk. So I felt the same way with Venerable Tong in my city, Nha Trang City, at the monastery, Kim Seung Monastery. And I trained with him, and some of the trainings that I received and education I received was actually death meditation, which is quite morbid for someone so young stepping into it. But I think he knew that I was very lost, but he never gave up on me. That's one thing I will credit the Mahayana tradition, is that they really go out of their way with supreme unprecedented patience and endurance in guiding the student, um, and they want to see the student come to fruition. But however, then I'm back in my city, St. Pete, and there's not that many Mahayana temples. And I had to actually do community service at a Theravadan monastery after receiving my first ticket at a very young age. So I told the judge, I said, okay, I'll go do community service at this monastery. And I was quite intrigued by their chants, by the Pali chants. And I got hooked from there. And their robes are pretty bad, pretty drippy. Yeah, these style right here. I mean, there's something about the robes too that was pretty cool versus the Mahayana robes. Um, this seems more holy for me, because they always had to wear that color. They couldn't change. And the Mahayana, they put the outer robes over only doing ceremonies and service, and then they're more veered towards engaging with the public. Whereas the Theravadan monks, they don't, they keep a distance. So to me, it just seemed like they were like sentient holy beings. In the monasteries, there was something mysterious about them, and peaceful, that they just keep to themselves. Primarily, just their behavior in the monasteries was intriguing to me. Theravada is not a one size fit all, and everyone have to look at the three primary schools to see what fits best for them. But then when I went into the teachings and I saw that this was the original, it started first with the Theravadins before the split. So I realized, oh yay! So I'm not wasting my time making comparisons, and now I suggest that people should start with Theravadins and then make informed decision and choices to make your comparisons to see which one best fit for you. Especially this is the source.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Compare your Catholic background to this. The Catholicism, historically speaking, is the first church of Christianity, right? So you were the Orthodox Christian, now you're the Orthodox Buddhist. Um, that's an interesting correlation. So you've been a monk now for how many years?
8 and still going.
Mhm. I'm sure this past 8 years you've learned a lot, right? Um, so, what uh, have you noticed is the biggest change or the biggest wow moment in the last 8 years that you didn't realize once you started? Would you be the most surprised by um, going forward?
Reflecting back on 8 years, I graduated quite fast, comparable to other monks. I don't know. Maybe the gifts from the universe, the brain's firing quicker, the synapses, the neurotransmitters. But I graduated quite quick. Maybe because I paid close attention. Maybe I was veered towards philosophy at a young age. I've gotten notes, handwritten notes, since I was like 13 years old, 14, 15, 16, 17. What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose in life? Psychology, history, sociology, anthropology, psychology. And just putting all the pieces together helped me move about the path quite smoothly, the academic attainment. I started to use the Butto in breath But, out breath To, which means Buddha in Thailand, the Samadhi method since I was 14 years old. So that's 22 years of meditation using the one pointed concentration technique. So again, it all fall into place when I'm sitting doing vipassana. So and the fact that I progressed through it quick, fast, effective, and efficient leads me to tell all of you confidently that if I did it, you all can do it too. You just got to give it a shot and be disciplined towards it. I made myself available to the public after graduating after 5 years of apprenticeship, and made myself available to the public in serving the public by and through listening and counseling people, also known as Buddhist psychotherapy. And I learned from that moving forward, because that's what I studied at Eckerd College, was counseling psychology, and how it pulled me different directions into the journeys of people's lives. And I really asked for what really got what I asked for when, in my college days, I wonder what it was going to be like to be a therapist. And I find myself quickly on the other side of the chair, conducting these sessions for free for people, and how exhausting it was, and how I learned from it. Just everything in the textbook, classical, and then how I had to develop policies and procedures. I mean, it was just such an amazing journey. And now I want to sit and reflect and write books. I was in the middle of writing 40% of my book, but more things came into my life. The program, the cognitive behavior therapy program, and the rapid realization program, aimed at reducing student suicides, teen suicides, and increasing student resiliency, hampered my progress in the writing process. Um, so that's something that I want to get back to. But there's a wealth of information and data that I have gathered as I would say, scientist. I would consider myself during the experimental process of all this. And what I learned, the insight I learned in screening people, not just for psychological health, things that we see in the DSM-5 diagnoses, ICD-10, but also from a Buddhist perspective, the greed, anger, and ignorance of the Four Noble Truths, and merging everything all together to help them make sense of their world, and tracing the root cause of the problem, identifying the problem, coming up with a fast, effective, efficient solution, so that people can move on about their lives, school, work, home balance. Um, so it's been amazing. It brings a great smile to my face, and it inspires students such as Novice Lee, who's sitting to my right, who saw the tremendous amount of work. Um, and now there are thousands of teachings that I have left for everyone on social media, and the messages are getting out there. So yeah, I think what it always surprises me is that enlightenment is real. and the ability for me to taste that enlightenment, to experience that in 2017, as I repeat what I have said previously publicly, that night when I sat from 10 p.m. until 1, between 10 to 1 or 10 to 2, between that 3-4 hour time span, to enter from samadhi and into vipassana, and the peace that I felt. The 4 hours I sat in human time, but 20 minutes of heavenly time was unlike any other that I've ever experienced in the totality of my life. What a profound experience. And one has to practice in order to, I mean, you look up nirvana and enlightenment, people are like, I still don't get it. Right. Because it's so hard to put into words. No different than the analogy of all the fish asking the turtle, hey, you took a walk on dry land. How was it? Well, there's no way the fish can actually feel what it's like to be on dry land because you're not the turtle. And there's no way the turtle can use adjectives to describe to these fish what dry land is like. So enlightenment is kind of like that turtle on dry land. um, and the many more definitions that you all can Google what enlightenment actually really is. But for me, that's what kept me continuously on this path, and that's what surprises people is that I'm young and have so much going for me, but yet I gave up everything for so long, and still continuing this path happily, jubilant, because I want to tap into that again. I mean, due to so much programs, I haven't had time for myself, and I feel a little selfish if I just sat underneath a tree and just observe humanity fall apart. So I made myself taking on some Mahayana work, the Bodhisattva duties, but it's such a joy, and that's what gets me. And so I'm telling you all that yes, enlightenment is achievable and attainable in this lifetime. It's not a place where you go after you die. It is something you can taste, something that you can experience, and once you experience it, just like any other experience in your life, whatever sports you play, that bliss, that flow, that reeled you into that sport because of that in the moment, that concentration, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future. You're just there, and you're just like, wow, what it's like to just be there and absorb the energy, the flow with the people, with the time that you have, and the people that you're with. Um, just indescribable, magnificent.
That sounds beautiful, beautiful, and it's
Oh, I should also
irony
I
is
should also put a disclosure that I am not an arahant. I am not a fully enlightened being, and anyone that claims that they are an arahant is not one. So I would say that all of you can. Yeah, there's multiple definitions of enlightenment, and I gave you all one definition, and that is what I tasted and experienced. But so I don't want people to misconstrue that. Oh my God, look, he's a Buddha or he's an arahant. Far from it.
the, the irony is that a lot of people feel like that there's no way this lifetime like this you can experience that. And they're saying, no, it's possible.
Mm.
It is possible. Um, wow. So you said a lot there, but I think what's really cool is that you are able to take Eastern philosophy and Eastern uh, train of thought and bring it to a Western context and make it relatable to a Western audience. That is something that I could foresee being a huge challenge for a lot of people. Um, and it's interesting because when I've noticed people, Americans, that are curious enough about Buddhism, about the Dharma, once they begin to learn a little bit, they embraced it because it's the one religious identity or philosophical concept that proves itself. It proves itself, and the teachings, is evident in front of you when you look at the world we live in. And so I've noticed a lot of people, they don't normally reject it once they become aware of what the teachings are. Then they experience meditation, and they go forward with that. So you are able to do that. And do you do you notice that again? Now they're still there with you. You have people that have come to you, obviously, and some novices. Do you notice a willingness to people embrace what you're doing, your work, or do some people come to you for um, therapeutic needs, psychological needs, and they just want to leave the Buddhism part out of it and just get the psychological help from you, or are they all in on it?
Yeah, so you get a variety of that, and I try to steer away from anything that is of religious affairs, so that we don't color in about what's happening here. Um, my job is to meet each and every single student where they're at in life, and that is a tremendous challenge to try to screen them to see, are you dealing with death, a breakup, a loss, a divorce, or loss of a parent, loss of a child, friends, just got fired, can't find a job, just graduated school, couldn't finish a dissertation, a thesis. So you have to really be skillful to meet the student where they're at in life, and then be real and coming up with a solution and say, well, this is the problem. And the problem is that you desire this part of your life, you want this to be in a certain way, in a particular manner, when it cannot be. And this is the true nature of reality of life, or the giving circumstances that is happening, unfolding in that life of that particular individual. Um, and then I gave, and I said, if the Buddha was here, this is what he would say. And then I wait for the student to agree. um, and they have choices there to agree or to not agree, but it's quite irrefutable what the Buddha have laid out in regards to what constitutes our suffering. um, Desire causes suffering, but it takes a skillful monk to explain to them what that desire is. I don't want a divorce. I want him to be in my life forever. I want her to stick around. And you have to hear people, you have to listen very closely to that desire, the aspects in details, and help them come to terms that, if it was meant to be, it would be, but it's not. And I think people are very resistant to that. We all are. We want some things to just be stable, secure, ours, and within our control. But Achan Chow asserts that it just can't be. It is what it is, and it can't be what it ain't. But I get it all. I get the psychological aspects of it. I get the religious part of it, and they're trying their best to make sense of it. And that's all I really can do, is to apply the best available science we know about psychology, psychological modalities and therapies, different types of eclectic therapies, and the 84,000 teachings per individual, giving them the individualized attention everyone deserves. Everyone wants to be heard, seen, and respected, and try to pick up the slack where traditional psychotherapies fail people. It's the large numbers that comes to me. One of the questions I ask is, have you tried a therapist before? How long? And then, did it work out for you? Did you notice any changes? And, and yet we are here.
It's gotta be a rewarding feeling once you when you find people that are in dire need of hope and help, and suicide to them seems to be the only option, and you're able to get through to them and to teach them, and they embrace, and they find, you know, peace and purpose. Um, like what is that like for you? Because I know as a monk, feeling pride and being proud of things, is something that's not really um, accentuated. So how do you, what is that like for you?
Yeah, in the beginning it was like, oh, yay, but that 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 gratification doesn't last long, because there's so much work to do. Um, I understand the magnitude. COVID came along, and the magnitude of phone calls that came in, and the many times that I actually collapsed, like got knocked out during sessions. I mean, holding the phone, laying on the ground, just trying to hear the last words, because I'm so exhausted without any help, without any fundings, without any resources. One man can do it by himself and can do it all, but just for how long? And my body just couldn't endure that long. It's something that obviously I went to the extreme in trying to be a provider for people. Yeah, I knocked out 3 times, and of course I called back the next day and I said I apologize, but where were we again? Like, and people have a lot of compassion for me. I'm trying the best I can to meet each person, and sitting there taking clinical notes, coming up with treatment plans. I'm doing everything that a therapist is doing, but without a lot of technologies, without voice recorders, without softwares and money for that software and the fundings, and the list just goes on. I'm not going to sit here and name it all. Then I'll be a complainer. It's easy becoming a complainer, but what is hard is that, Venerable Chidao, you come up with a system and handle these cases. Do what others cannot do. So the praise and blame comes in all day, every day. But until this present day, I have a high standards, and I'm going to keep going as long as my health endures. So there's much work to do that I don't have time to sit here and celebrate the thousands and hundreds of people that call me, and more to come. Suffering never stops, and that's why. And we have a shortage of monks. Novice Lee sitting next to me is, I'm cultivating him to be the next Buddhist psychotherapist, to take on the masses of suffering. So mind you, other religion teach the what, but they don't teach the how. We teach the how. We have the how. We have 84,000 hows to solve human problems. And so Novice Lee now has to catch up on 22 years of my studies, practice, experience, and knowledge in order to serve the next generation. I don't even know what the next generation is called. He's Gen Zoomer, I'm Gen Millennial, and whatever Gen Alpha thereafter. Um, you know, get ready for it. The narcissism, the self-centered, the schizophrenia, the bipolar, multi-axial diagnosis. It's going to go on. Who's going to serve them? Who's going to save them? And how many can we actually save with the amount of monks that we don't have? Skillful monks, yeah, there's a lot of monks, but how many are skillful? How many are trained in psychology, in psychotherapy, and understanding culture and context, and meeting the student where they're at? You can't just come up to them or wait for them to come to you as a monk and be like, sit down, let's talk about the first noble truth. And if you're not skillful about the first noble truth, and they hear the word suffering, and if it's put off in the wrong way, in a wrong manner, in a wrong tone, at the wrong time, and does not fall under right speech in the Noble Eightfold Path, that's a great way to chase people away from Buddhism. Getting past the first noble truth.
I've seen it when people pick up the Buddhism 101 book, right? Or Buddhism for Dummies or whatever, suffering, and then people be in denial. I'm not suffering. My desire, what? And so because they don't have somebody helping them to understand. They don't know, forget this. But you're right. The work is never done. The work is never done. And unfortunately, it's a thankless job. What I've seen in my life, I've been around a lot of monks, a lot of temples. I used to, now I'm in a nursing home getting physical therapy, but I used to visit a lot of temples just to go visit. Like I said, I just want to be in that atmosphere. It's cool to go during a New Year or a book parade or whatever, some type of a festival, but I like to go when nothing's going on, when it's just the monks there, and be in their presence and just to be part of the whole thing. And, I've seen I've seen a few monks, quite a few, that the whole thing of being a monk to them is is just it. They're just a monk in passing. We're just passing time. Like they were maybe were brought in from overseas to help out the temple, and then their role there is just to live there and help people when they come in or whatever. But they're not really engaged, right? But then I see some monks that are very engaged, like yourself, engaged in the community, engaged in your the people that actually come to you and say, "Hey, I need help with A, B, and C." You say, "Okay, you sit down." You know, you and I had a phone call a while back, private, and I don't find my journal, but I've been writing every day, and you know, and you and I didn't really know each other, right? But you sat down and you said, "Okay, so tell me this, tell me this, tell me this." You actually cared and asked important questions, listened to my answers, and you given informative information, and um, you were listening like that doctor prescribing the proper prescription for our minds, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing, I can say, because if we're going to be in the role of service like you are, I mean, you might as well do that. And that's what you do. So I appreciate it from me to you. Thank you. Um, I do want to ask now Vasily a couple of questions before Dylan starts to ask. That's okay.
Sure. We can drag this on an hour and a half if you like. We cleared the whole night for you guys. And by the way, Big Shrimp, um, you know, when you called, yeah, you're right. We didn't know each other, and the way how I treated you is the same way I treat this is standard of care across the board with anyone. To stop instantly, to stop my whole entire life. You are the most important thing in those moments in my ear when you're telling me your journey and your story. And in those moments, I select whatever it is recommendation that is necessary to tell you. And all I can hope for is that, oh, I hope he's going to keep a journal. I hope he's going to do the homework that needs to be done in order for things to be resolved in the manner that is desirable in the eyes of the Buddha. And you know, and here we are. So you know, I just never know who I'm gonna be able to help change or you know help adjust in their life for the better. Mm. But yes, here's novicely.
Well, obviously, wow. So, the first question I have, obviously, is how in the world did you find them what you down? I'm assuming the internet.
Not actually. So I was introduced to Venerable Jidao by another one of his students who was a good friend of mine and one of the only friends of mine at the time. I had some things go on in my personal life. It was slightly spiraling and going back down towards the bottom. So him and his mother had a talk privately that I didn't know about, and we were supposed to hang out. He said, "Oh, I forgot that I have to help a friend of mine do some marketing and advertising for a fundraiser that he's doing." And that's all the information that he gave me. So I agreed to it, and I come with him, and I walk in, and I see Venerable Jidao robing up in all orange robes like I'm wearing now. I don't even know if I can explain what went through my head. Confusion, concern, just a lot of different emotions. And I'm like, I looked at my friend and I said, what are we marketing again for? I think you forgot that part. So I was kind of set up, but it was for the better.
That's awesome. So, obviously, you're Asian. So what is your nationality? If you mind me asking.
So I was born in Korea and I was adopted at 8 months old and brought to the United States of America.
Oh, okay. Okay, so were you raised by a Korean family or American family or
So
Asian or?
I was not raised by an Asian family, a Korean family. So my mother is American, and she's actually Jewish. And then my father was also adopted, and he is also American.
Oh wow. So Yeah, I'm sure you were definitely culture shock when you saw him rolling up. So, when you embrace Buddhism for yourself, what has your journey been like so far? Since you, I'm not talking to become a novice, but since you began to, embrace Buddhism as a layperson onward.
So the experience so far has been, to say the least, a bit challenging. There needs to be a lot of discipline, self-discipline. I'm sure, as you know and have heard, no one can save you, no one may save you. You must save yourself. And one of the biggest challenges was to try and bring ego up to the surface and figure out some past traumas fully and completely, which are still in progress. And it's a very painful and hard thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, it's what we call in the South, that I mentioned earlier, coming to this moment. What we all have to do um, once we come to the realization of what our problems are. And a lot of times we don't know what the underlying issues are in our lives. Just we put band-aids over them, we put a rug over it, we put layers upon layers upon layers over whatever it is. And so you got to keep digging and digging and digging. And once you find the root cause underneath it all, you're like, oh wow, I see it. But then you can start to address the issue. Um, by the way, I do want to say real quick for the listeners, in case they don't know, they probably don't. A novice is the first step into um, you know, start to ordain into monkhood, become a novice first, and then a bhikkhu, full-fledged monk after that. So novice duty is obviously a novice for a few months now. Well, it's been a few months because I see you shake your head and heart. Did you? Is that your goal? Is that what you plan to do? Is become a full-fledged bhikkhu yourself?
So yeah, the intent and the goal is to remain in the monkhood for as long as possible. My whole life, even as a younger child, I've always been very interested in helping people, and with seeing suffering, experiencing it, and seeing it in other people as well, peers and classmates while I was in school, seeing it with the eyes and seeing it with the heart. My goal has always been to try and lessen others' suffering and trying to help as many people as I can on this planet while I'm here.
It's very admirable. It really is. John, the venerable, hope you don't mind if I call you John. You don't mind? Do you mind?
Oh, they call me that all the time at the Laos monastery. They call me Ajahn. Ajahn. All the time.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that you're not thinking, I'm not. Wow, so tired. Why you call me Ajahn? Okay. So I'm just used to it. It's just natural to me when I speak to monks. There's a lot of misconceptions about Buddhism. Now, I typically Buddha is a god that we believe that Buddha created the earth and heaven. Pretty much the biblical narrative, like God is X, and whatever religion you are, you substitute for X, Buddha or whatever, and that's just not the case. It's really interesting to me, though, as I say, that this way of life is really universal. Anybody can practice it. You don't even have to believe. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but still practice mindfulness and meditation, and then learn for yourself the universal truths of life, the world. Buddhism is not a religion that proselytizes, that goes out and tries to convert people, like Christianity or Islam. But at the same time, I think there is a real need for Buddhism to grow, especially here in the West where people are not accustomed to uh, giving and like feeding their whoever their pastor, and then going to what I'm saying? They give an offering at church, but the whole system of giving and karma and making merit and all of that's different in Buddhism. And I would love to see Buddhism grow. As a matter of fact, one of my passions in life, I think because I live in Memphis and I've seen a lot of kids that live like in the hood, like in the real hood, in the real ghetto. I come from East Tennessee where like the ghetto here is nothing compared to like over there where kids are selling crack at 9 years old because they don't have a dad. Their dad's dead, their uncle's in jail, their mom's a prostitute or a crackhead. When you really see people in the hood, right? Like what I call hood reform is something in my mind that I've conjured up, is a dream of mine to be able to make an impact upon kids that are at risk and help them to make better decisions and understand you can be somebody. You don't have to go into this trajectory. You can be somebody in life and be a contributing member of society. And I think for Buddhism to grow, if Buddhism can grow, especially in the context of which you practice it, with psychotherapy, I think it could make a huge impact. But I'm curious to know, what do you think it would take for that to happen? Because, like I say, it's not a religion that goes out and tries to convert people, and they do a lot of that. So, what do you think that would even take?
We are faced with a lot of challenges, and I question that every day. Actually, even in my own program, I had to most recently suspend programs due to budget cuts and the lack of funding. Um, how people practice dana, generosity, in this school of Buddhism. We cannot ask for anything except for a glass of water. I cannot ask any one of you for a car ride. I can't ask for anything. And that suffocates us uh, in the Vinaya, the rules from 227 rules for monks, in order for things to grow. We can only make a compelling case, and the people have to be moved by their hearts to give the four requisites for monks, food, medicine, clothing, and shelter. And so it is by and through podcasts and the awareness of what we stand for, why we are here, why we do what we're doing, and challenging for me, um, and trying to save these suicidal kids, keeping them from harming themselves and or other people. It's just the chaos of adolescence, and keeping student resilient so that they remain in class and upon graduation to be good productive member of society. So it's a lot of work to do, and again, it's buying through shows like this and podcasts that people are moved, feel that there is a urgent need for programs as such, and how other programs have failed these youths, how certain entities, establishments, both religious, psychological services, public schools, judicial system, justice systems, juvenile justice systems, have failed these kids miserably. And we are left to pick up the slack, and that we should not give up on them by any and all means and by any and all cost. That we should band together in unity and cohesion to fund $5, $10. Every dollar goes towards targeting all of the hotspots in these cities. Now, there was a time in St. Petersburg here and in Tampa here, Florida, where things got very violent with gun violence. And I sat there. There's not a day that passes by when I watch the news and reflect what I can do to make an impact in the targeted specific geographic location of that crime, that neighborhood, that community. And it was always my wish to robe all of them up, all of the black kids of St. Petersburg, all of the black kids of Tampa, all the Puerto Rican kids, you name it, black, white, Puerto Rican, Chinese, you name it. I wanted to rope them up. I wanted to go there, hold the microphone, and ask them, look, I know you guys are gangsters. I know you guys are doing this. I know you guys are selling drugs. I know you guys just trying to stay alive and put food on your table and feed your families. But if the Buddha was here, he would ask all of you, how well is this working out for you? Sleeping with your 9mm Glock Beretta underneath your pillow, sleeping with one eye open, waiting for the police to serve that warrant at your house with your grandmother or your baby in the room. Our job is to wake them up by and through the skillful means of understanding their world, their turbulent, violent, desperate world of survival. When the heart is moved, I know that they will change. If the heart is moved, they will put their guns down. If their heart is moved, they will come towards this path and give up. Give it up, because it's so easier to just give up. Give up your old ways in your old days. You live by the gun, you will die by the gun. You live by the sword, you will die by the sword. And, quite frankly, I wasn't one that sat there and played with Barbie dolls. So I was one that police came, knocked on my door daily, nights, trying to return me back to my parents, and said, you all need to get your son, because your son is a menace in this very St. Petersburg, Florida. So, I've walked and I have lived that path. I have walked and lived the life of a renegade. And I gave up, and it's so easier giving up. I don't think I would look this young if I didn't give up, right? I would probably look like someone threw a roll of quarters at me. And to wake up these youths and to speak their language and to meet them at their level, you can inspire them. Sorry, I get phone calls all the time. You just never know if it's a psychological case or a suicide case. You just never know that when they give up and they come forward, it's liberating. True inner peace, true inner freedom, and true inner liberation. And one has to help them understand that in details. What does it mean? What does it mean to be at peace? And when you tell them peace means free from disturbing emotions, the lamentation, the depression, the anxiety, and so on, that you help them understand fully, comprehensively, and completely, I know that they will give up. Again, I think I'm focusing too much on the individualistic part of the youth. I mean, I see so much. You all forgive me for expanding on this, but I see so much suffering, and it weighs so heavy on everyone's heart, especially us first frontline providers for them. So again, in the future, I hope to establish a nonprofit organization, put all the 5 board members together, and my teachings have circulated, I don't know, maybe more than 50 million out there, and still yet received a phone call from, perhaps a millionaire, saying, hey, here's $100,000 to establish a monastery targeting violence for youths, and so on and so on. I would challenge, I would respectfully challenge someone give me the chance to apply the best available science I know in helping these kids, because so many have come to fruition. A few, but when I say many, is because one can change the world. I mean, look at Novice Lee here, Jen Zoomer's here, and Eric and Steven, and Gabe, and all of the pictures that I have given direct evidence where and who my students were, and where they are today, and where they're going. I've made it so visible and apparent that this program in fact works. I just need someone out there to truly believe that we can do this on a large scale establishing policies, guidelines for these kids, these adolescents. An adolescent is defined as anyone under 25. So, with the help of everyone's support, listening and spreading the message and getting together and how people get together, fundraising, we can make Buddhism the new educational system, because Buddhism is the most effective and comprehensive educational system the world has ever seen for millenniums.
I agree. And at the end of the day, the heart of the matter is just a matter of the heart. More said a few minutes ago. And all of your links will be in the bio and below. So for people who want to go to your link and make a donation and subscribe to you or whatever, I would highly encourage it. It's a noble cause. It's a needed cause for sure. As you can see, they're wearing robes. They're not wearing Armani or, 2-3-piece suits. They're wearing silk robes. But real quick, you said you're talking about the phone ringing and helping people. Do you mind to share one or two stories of someone that was on the brink of destruction? Maybe a mother calls you, or they came to you themselves, and someone that you were actually able to save and help. Would you mind to share a story or two about that?
Oh, I think I'm going to choose the most impactful one. I had an 8-year-old kid reach out to me on Instagram and said, my parents are fighting. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. And I really wanted to end it all. I just want all of this to stop. I want my parents to stop fighting. And I was like, oh boy. And I try to get his mind off the suicidal ideation and ask him what his favorite sports were. And he said soccer. 8-year-olds, 8-year-olds. Then, of course, as we've seen evident on YouTube lately, the 12-year-olds that are getting into shootouts. Twice, 2 shootouts in less than 15 minutes with police. So it makes me reflect on the 8-year-old. Then a lot of females. I've noticed that females are more suicidal than males with the statistics that I have gathered. Multiple females wanting to end it all over relationship issues. A lot of love issues, because school doesn't teach any of us how to love, how to forgive and ask for forgiveness, how to love. And it's the end of the world. I mean, the significance of the attachment, unlike any other. We read it in the book, Attachment Causes Suffering, but just to hear, he cares for me, he loves me, he pays for everything. I don't think I can ever meet someone like him. And then vice versa. There are some stories where, the male feels the same with the females, and how suicidal they were regarding that. And of course I tell them, and then I ask them, do you know anything about Buddhism and stuff? I try to move around about furthering the conversation. And I said, and for all the suicide cases, I said, listen, I know you want to take your life, but you do know that if you do take your life, it constitutes unfavorable rebirth, because you have a desire to non-exist. So I help them think about the consequences. Just because life is hard right now, you taking your life right now does not mean you get to get born in heaven as a demigod, the God's realms, the heavenly realms. It doesn't work that way. And then there are stories, in the scriptures about suicides and how to change in those moments. I think there was a pregnant mother one time. That was hard. Most of these stories, I alter their names and I alter it's hard to talk about because I don't want any identifying markers and things moved around. There are samples of it, actually full sessions of it on my YouTube that people can actually go back where it's uncut, it's not edited, like nothing. You hear the phone, you just hear it all. There's dozens actually on my YouTube. But for the rest of them, it's really hard for me to recall both emotionally and cognitively. Just because people think that he's a monk, he's bulletproof monk or something. I'm not, and sometimes I cry in the shower when no one's watching. A lot, and and I wonder sometimes. I asked my professor this. I asked my professor, Dr. Andrew at Edgar College. I said, for 25 years in your life, how many did you think you have changed and inspired? And she teared up. She says, I don't know. I did the best I could. I just hope that they all made it somehow. But I know some of them probably didn't. I know probably a good portion did, in fact, take their life. You can't save them all. So that weighs really heavy on my heart, just because for some that I feel the weight of it, and what they text to me in my Instagram, and what they write to me in my email. I know that it's going to be a complete suicide. It will be successful suicide, and there's nothing that can change. And even though I have applied the best that I possibly could, so yeah, and so we continue this work. And we're not going to stop. I don't ever foresee me stopping and cultivating novice and other monks to do the same.
I can imagine the weight. I cannot imagine rather the weight, of that, having to realize that. Are you familiar with the starfish story? The starfish, I guess, analogy.
Yeah, the lady started throwing him back, and the gentleman says, "There's millions out here. Why would you? What are you doing? You're wasting your time picking them up. Bending over and all this effort and energy that you're exerting." And she says, "Well, it means something for that one that just flew, and I'm still continuing to pick this one. I'm saving as much as I can." And that story was shared in the Lifeguard book by Dr. Cabrera or Carrera, Richard Carrera, I believe it was. And that's what fuels my heart to keep going. I mean, if you Novice Lee left some things out when you questioned him, but cocaine use here on the path of suicide and destruction, he's direct evidence right here that you can pick his brain at any point in time. And here he is, and he gave it all up. He's under direct supervision. I've tested him. I test students to see if they would go back in their old ways in their old days, and hopefully people are moved by the many stories that was previously published, and the actively visible evident that one's life is being changed right now, and the many more that is looking up to him. His Gen Zoomers looking up to Novice Lee. In the thousands on TikTok to see his transformation.
That's beautiful, and that's it. People will see the change in your life, obviously, and they will watch it, and they will see the flower begin to bloom. They'll be like, "Oh wow!" The impact that'll make is unbelievable. Especially people that knew you, like in real life, that knew you in person, and see the before and after. And they're like, "Oh, this guy, I was with him. I remember he used to get high. He used to do this, he used to party, or whatever. And he's a monk now. Like what? So that's awesome. I want to go ahead and turn this over to Producer Hodge and Dylan. Yeah, you can ask them anything you want about Buddhism or whatever we talked about. I'm sure they have an answer.
Well, I really only have just one because we are so late in the podcast. But quickly, how I knew about Buddhism was, of course, how everybody here in the South does a Chinese restaurant. They can have a big statue of like a green Buddha. I mean, we've all seen it. And growing up, you were like, what is that? They go, that's Buddha. That's their God. You never listen to them about that, right? Because I grew up in the southern Baptist Christianity household state. I mean, it's their God. You don't worry about it. And then as I grew older, I started to wonder why. Like, what makes just like obviously you were mentioning that Buddha was not a god. He was, different things. But it's like, why is that? And then these questions, this question is probably going to sound like a first grade question, but again, I'm new to this. One of the things I was reading I think it's called like 6 Religions That Changed the World, and Buddhism was in there. One of the most interesting things that I was like, what is this? Is the offering of the orange. So kind of what is that?
The offering of the orange.
Offering of the orange.
Okay,
Like
so
offering of a fruit.
so back up one more time. I heard the 6 religions that changed the world, and
Yeah. Yes, Buddhism was in the book, and they were talking about offering of a fruit, offering of an orange of some sort. I mean, is my information wrong?
I don't recall any significance in the offering of the orange.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
In the screening of tradition, culture, and heritage, that I'm aware of.
Okay. Because I was doing an analogy. Well, I was also doing a little bit of information as we were talking here about the offering of the orange, and there was a monk that's actually answering these questions, and he put somebody had asked exactly what is the offering of the orange, and someone said the Buddhist monk here said the offering is not for the Buddha, who doesn't need our oranges, and in any case has too many already. It is for us. There was a real peace in this offering of fruit, as if the Buddha was really here. I mean, am I going off like something wrong? Like, am I going down like a bad, wrong hill?
Oh, okay. So I understand where you're headed with this.
Okay.
So that was the last, before you came along and Big Shrimp asked that emotionally charged questions. I was a little disoriented by that. But all right. So Sri Lankans and Vietnamese and a lot of people in the Southeast Asia, they offer to the Buddha, right? We see them offering a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetable, I mean, you name it. And the Buddha is not sitting back chilling, eating all of this, nor does it constitute anything. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that. And he doesn't want that. He wants people to look at their own flaws and faults, look at the defilements, the kilesas in Pali, and start looking at your own greed and desire and ignorance and resolve that. You get more merits sitting there meditating than putting expensive fruits that someone else could eat, um, could benefit from. So there's a lot of rituals in Southeast Asia where we Theravadins look at that and we kind of scratch our head and we're like, maybe we shouldn't do that. It's a waste of resources, and those poor fruits could be served in a different manner for humanity. So in that context, I hope that provides for you uh, what that means and how we practice the right way.
Yeah. Sorry if I was confusing. I was kind of, when you guys didn't understand, I was like, well, I don't think I got my information wrong, but maybe I did. So another one would be, and this would be the last one I'll ask, the Dalai Lama. Is that kind of like a reincarnation of Buddha? I've heard that numerous times.
He is considered an active living Buddha in his tradition, the Vajrayana tradition. Okay. They truly believe in reincarnations of previous monks and previous enlightened beings in their tradition. Matter of fact, they have like 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds who have been elevated instantly to his eminence. Because they took this. They said this child is the direct reincarnation or Rinpoche or previous other most venerables that have achieved enlightenment, status of Buddhahood under sub categories, and it's confusing. It's a lot. But you know, the Dalai Lama is a wonderful and great leader, truly. when we all look at his life's journey. To me, he's very humble. He's never said, "Yeah, I'm a living Buddha." No, he says, "I'm a simple monk." And we see his direct, simple message of peace, unity, cohesion, um, and forgiving, the book of joy, the book of happiness, the interfaith work that he has done throughout his life, and the most recent attempt to defame him with him and the child on his lap was taken out of context. So it's really bad karma. But there's a lot of things going on in his traditions too. No one exempt praise or blame, and even certain people want him dead. So when he's around, there's armed guards trying to protect his life, no different than protecting the Pope in the Catholic world. But I consider him a supreme Buddhist leader that we all could use more and more each day, no matter what tradition he's from.
When you said the Dalai Lama with the kid sitting on lap was taking it into a different interpretation, kind of how was it taken out of how was it taken out of context? What was it meaning in I guess in his religion? Like, is that normal?
So I don't live in Tibet, and I'm not familiar with their culture. And the same could be said about certain things that are done in Vietnamese cultures, unless you live it and breathe it and witness it and experience it for oneself. Come and see for oneself. Ehipasiko in Pali. Apparently, the tongue sticking out is to denote certain meanings, but it is not in a sexual way. And many people have asserted that. And someone just took a clip portion out of it. Mind you, he's sitting there in public with cameras on him, um, teaching the child about peace and message of peace, mutual sense of respect, both elder and adolescent. You know, and then of course he jokes around. He's playful the way that he always has been publicly, and he sticks his tongue out. And of course, in certain cultures, they feed with their tongues, or they bite and they feed tongue to tongue, mouth to mouth. Of course, that sounds weird when Westerners read that. If I was to write that on an article, or even say it now, people are like, "Ew, what's he talking about? What's happening here?" But again, you must understand the culture, heritage, tradition across the board to make your assessment and evaluation accurately. And that was taken out of context in an attempt to defame him. In Buddhism, the subject of karma and intent, mens rea, in Latin and in criminal law, is that you willfully, knowingly, and intentionally wanting this child to do harm, or is doing harm to this child in some way, shape, or form. So a lot, people have knee-jerk reactions. They jump to conclusions, and it was just taken out of context. And we don't need more negativity in the world. I mean, it is already the way that it is. And even if someone did wrong, if the Dalai Lama did wrong, or if I did wrong, or if somebody else did wrong, the Buddha instructed us to look. You got to look at your own faults. You got to look at your own contributions to your own suffering and other people's suffering before you start running around judging other people. So, yeah, no, a lot of work to do here in Buddhism.
The picture back to you.
All right. Well, like I say, all of Venerable Tree Dao's information will be in the notes below. And I encourage everybody to look further. There are a ton of videos on YouTube, this Facebook, and Instagram as well. I've been going down the rabbit hole of watching all kinds of videos and learned a lot. I'm really intrigued. You talked earlier about the death meditation, and then one of your videos was right around Halloween, when you were standing in front of a bunch of props in a store somewhere. And then there was another video where somebody was holding a sword or a knife to your throat, and you talked about things there as well. I know we're running long, but I used to work in the funeral business as a mortician.
Ooh.
And, oh goodness, the stories I could tell you, the stories. And, yeah. But we're going along, and I know Mr. Hart is probably getting tired. He's good. Spent a whole day with him. But I could talk to you guys all night. Just I have been I benefited from this conversation. Um, I feel that I ended not in the just at the bottom, but I've gained from. So thank you very much. And with that, normally I close with a word of encouragement or with a positive, something positive, but you're the monk. You're the professional. I want you to close us out with a positive word encouragement, or whatever.
So first of all, thank you for both of you for this opportunity for us to share our message. And we inspire, all of us inspire other people by and through our own change. When you give this path to peace an opportunity, when you try it for yourself, understanding the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, and the transformation you see within yourself will inspire those in your family, those in your community, those within your system of working, homeschool, life, work, balance. And slowly you see the miracles, and you see without Buddhism the foolishness that we observe every day from our supervisors, or our kids, or teachers, you name it, across the board, our police officers, all sorts of people misbehaving and not keeping the precept. So when everyone examine Buddhism as an experiment, let's try something new. Let's see what this philosophy and way of life is all about. Your eyes will start to open, and people will start to change as you start to change in your life. You need not to force them to change. Most of us want a lot of people in our life to change. We know what is good for them, but do we know what is good for us? We trust other people, or so we think. But do you trust yourself? Do you trust your gut feeling? Are you confident and secure in the decision that you're making, and the science of that decision that you're making and taking? And so I have no doubt that each and every single one of you can taste and fully attain enlightenment, nirvana. The Buddha was born here on this planet, was raised on this planet, and achieved full enlightenment here 2,566 years ago. There are proof that arahants, that people have attained arahantship, as evident in Thailand and elsewhere around the world, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam. And so therefore, I have no doubt that all of you can achieve the same. So I look forward to hearing from all of you as you all make your way towards the teachings and the curiosity and the information, to hear your comments and questions. And I'm available to the public anytime to take on more phone calls and to help you through the path and through the process. Never think that I'm busy or, always occupied. The people always comes first, and it is exactly what the Buddha wants. So I'd like to end tonight's podcast with my wishes for all of you to always be well, always be happy, always be healthy. May you all realize the light of your own true nature. May you all be healed and be a significant source of healing for other people.
Thank you very much, John. So, by the way, I do want to apologize for getting you emotional earlier, but I do appreciate your candidness and honesty. Of course, I know I wouldn't even think less than honest. So thank you. By the way, we stopped recording, so I just wanted to say that. But this was great. I'm excited. It'll go up Thursday. I mean, I'll make a post about it and on Thursday. And like I said, all your will be a bit post. So.
That's awesome. That's all. Thank you. One of the story that I forgot to share it was evident on my YouTube that night. Was a student that said, yeah, he said, I have a ski mask and I have a gun, and I'm gonna do it tonight. My sister made a lot of money doing it, and I'm gonna do it too. I mean, obviously it sounds like a robbery. Obviously, it probably was a robbery, and the sister probably did in fact engage in a capital violent felony offense, and the brother wanted to do the same for quick money. And I'm just like, right out there where the porch is, and I said, did I hear what I just heard? You even hearing yourself? And I told the student, I'm like, hold on, watch this. And I took my phone and I said, I'm gonna go on YouTube right now. The camera's gonna point up in the ceiling, and I want you to hear yourself when you get out of prison. How ridiculous you sounded tonight, because you're gonna get caught. There's no way you're gonna go out there with a ski mask and a gun and think you're gonna get away with it with the forensics that they got out there on handguns and fibers and DNA. There's some stories I will never forget till I die, and that's one of them. The prevention of gun violence and I have no resources to stop them. It would be nice to have like a set funding aside to say, look, what is it that you need? Probably hundred of dollars, $200 in bills. They need the money for something. The kid was 20 years old. He needed the money for something. I should have asked what it was for. I was just, it was so many things going on in my chaotic world of the TikTok monk life, the 911 TikTok monk life, that I failed to even dig through curiosity because I was just appalled. And, had resources available on the side, I could have bought some time for him to figure it out, to stop that from happening, to slow it down, something. But I have no resources to do that. That's probably what they need, is just probably a little bit of money or cash to resolve some things, so that they can think straight. Sometimes I step into their life or they step into my life, and there's something actively going on. Getting kicked out of the house, can't make rent, gonna live. Novice Lee here was going to live in his van. He was going to live in his van. This is crazy. Some of the stories, if I sat there and thought through the details of it to share with you, it was like I'm telling. That's why I told you in the beginning of the podcast for me to sit and review and rewind some of these stories and put it in a book. There's no way people are going to believe the things that I've heard. And as you go through the YouTube of the historical context, the timeline in the YouTube, I would say 2021. I think it stopped at 2021. I don't think I did anything 2022, the one-on-one sessions, but you just hear it. You hear it, and you just like, wow. And the purpose of recording it so other people can identify that you are not alone, that there are even more chaotic circumstances and the world that people live in out there, the secret world, or the shameful world, or the violent world, of addiction, trauma, all sorts of psychological addiction, sexual, um, what is it? What is it? Trauma, addiction, and abuse. The psychological abuse, sexual abuse that people go through, and they don't talk about it. And so other people who go through it individually feel that I'm alone. This happened to me. But when you hear other people, they're able to get help, reach out to therapists, and so on. So again, I think the people can look forward to that when that work is done and completed. Be the next Buddhist psychotherapy manual.
Yeah, a lot of people keep things bottled up, and then under pressure they explode and do unthinkable things. But if you ever got the chance to really put all that to a book and write a book, it would be incredible. But I'm excited that we have people like you that's doing the work you're doing, making a difference. a noticeable difference, a noticeable impact. And also that we have English speaking monks. I mean, I know there's a Baha'iri over in California, at Venerable Ajahn students. I know they have those over in the UK as well, but let's face it, a lot of them are a lot older, whereas you can still relate to the younger generation. And a lot of times, I know a lot of young people, they feel like, oh, that preacher or that priest or whoever is, he's just old, he just doesn't get me. So, you got time on your side, both of you do, and I look forward to, hopefully it'll be broadcast on YouTube when he exchanges his 10 precepts for the 227. I think there'll be more to come. It's needed. And like I told you before, I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to end up doing it myself, and maybe permanently this time.
He's going through a very rigorous level of training. I have reserved. He can't even call venerable yet. He has to earn it, even though it is honorific. It is an honorific title afforded to them, regardless of novice. They are still venerables.
Yeah.
But I said, oh, not in this school of Ji Dao. No, the hell you not. No, the hell you not.
You gotta earn it.
That's right. Yeah, they got to show it.
I can imagine, like being directly under you like that and living with you. I mean, that's awesome because it's accountable to you, and you're not that far much above him in age, and so it's like you get him, he gets you. Whereas for me, I was in the Laos temple with 50, 60-year-old 40-year-old monks. I was in my early 20s at the time, and there's a huge difference not only in age but culturally too. I speak Lao, understand Lao, not Lao culture, but understanding the Lao culture living in America is different from Lao culture being in Laos all your life. You come to the United States for 5 years, right? I mean, it's a big difference. And so, to me, I learned, but if I would have had somebody like you that was around my age, but you are the same age actually, but somebody around my age, somebody that was, understood that, to understand more, relate to more, I think that would have progressed more. But I'm not at all saying you need so much. I learned from where I fall for that, or to complain. It's just the nature of the circumstances. But Mr. Lee, obviously, when you earn the venerable title and then you go all the way, and that's going to be awesome. I cannot wait to see it. So, thank you both so much for coming on, and I'll continue watching and supporting. Thank you.
Y'all have a good night, and I look forward to speaking with you soon down the road. And we're available for any future podcasts or any subjects that you all can think of. So it's always a joy to participate. Our age group, right, and the discussion necessary to inspire others around the world. Thank you, Dylan, for your patience and coming back the second time due to timing issues. We had to drag you back.
No, it's all good. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Have a good night. Take care. Thank you all for joining us on this podcast. I know that I couldn't get some of the questions on YouTube. Here, I guess somebody got mad I couldn't answer. I can't do it all, folks. Wish I had supernatural powers, but I don't. And again, invite all of you to visit my YouTube. Trying to merge everyone towards YouTube. That's the whole library of teachings are on there. And a special thanks to Eric, Big Shrimp, aka Big Shrimp podcast. And It raises awareness and furthering the conversation and repeating the conversation for those who are new to Buddhism and wanting to make a change, an impact towards what's going on in the world right now with our youths. So until the very next time, we both have to get some rest. Obviously, I think you all see that it's getting late over here in Florida. And until the very next time, take care.